Greetings, Ranger fans. Jake here for another Deeper Run Through Live. Our last Deeper Run Through. Our last review of a new Power Rangers episode, or set of episodes in this case. Um, at least for the foreseeable future. Um, very wild to be thinking of that. But we are at the conclusion of Power Rangers Cosmic Fury. Episodes 9 and 10. Master Plan and the End. And it's wild to think of that after 30 years, this could very well be the end of the series that we've known and loved for all these years since August 28th, 1993. We've been here before at the end of RPM with episode 700, but this one feels like there's almost more of a finality to it. Simply because it looks like there are plans for the franchise to continue, but the series that started it all, this could be it. And as far as my channel goes, this could be it. This could be my last review of a new episode after over 11 years of doing this. I do still have 2 more videos left to go. Episodes 9 and 10, or not episodes 9 and 10, episodes 99 and 100 of Database Rangers Power Reviews, which are both in the works, and I'm working hard to get those done by the end of the year. Plus, there will still be the remaining 8 live stream commentaries to accompany the end of Database Rangers Power Reviews. But yeah, it really does feel like we are at the end of an era here. So thank you to those of you who have stuck with me and who have joined me tonight for this sort of little kind of a farewell to Power Rangers. Interestingly, I know I'm not the only one actually doing this sort of live stream this evening. To my understanding, I saw on social media that Rolliver Queen, I believe, is also doing a live stream later tonight in about an hour and a half. And I believe that he's also covering, is this really the end of Power Rangers, and reflecting upon that. So it might be something to check out after this live stream. So a little shout out there. So without any further ado, let us not forget our 3 equally non-controversial phrases. So, number 1, say it with me, chat. Black lives matter. Number 2, say it with me, chat. Fascism is bad. And number 3, say it with me, chat. Superheroes are fun. So let's take a look at this here. Yeah, I know, it would have been great if we could have gotten to episode 1000. But we have made it to episode 9 of Power Rangers Cosmic Fury, Master Plan. And looking to our Netflix recap, little summary here. The connection to the Morphin Grid is in danger unless the team can travel to Eltar and take back the Master Captivator and Ollie without backup. So, I'm gonna be honest. This was the episode that really kind of blew things up for me. And if we had actually been doing live reactions, which haven't really been practical with a toddler, who MJ is giving me the kudos for getting that toddler to bed before the stream. Thank you very much, and thank you, Nerdy. If we had a camera shooting us while we were reacting, I might have actually been the one depositing coins in the swear jar this time, because I was just so shocked and excited by the twists that hit in the second half of this episode. you all know at this point, I believe, that my favorite Power Rangers episode of all time is Countdown to Destruction, parts 1 and 2. Um, and the shout outs to Countdown to Destruction in this episode and the story twist that called back to Countdown to Destruction really just like hyped me up so much and excited me so much and got me so on edge because I'm like, oh, what is going to happen here? What's going to happen here? What's going to happen here? I was just like, we took a brief break in between episodes when we were watching this, but we did watch them both in one night, and I was just like, I was pacing all around, just shaking my hands, just like all ramped up, like we're going into the final episode. We're going into the final episode. Oh, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And this episode did such a good job of setting that up. And I had been wondering throughout the course of this season if they were going to be able to do that. And I was so pleased that they hit it here. Obviously you want every episode to really hit you like that, but if you're gonna make the big gut punch, do it when you're going into the finale. And here they did. But before I get into that second half of the episode, we should at least tackle a little bit of the lead up to that. We did end on a cliffhanger last time, whether or not Ollie had been finally freed from Zed's evil spell after all these episodes. And we have the broadcast from Eltar. We see that Bajilia is fully back after only being gone for half an episode, but it again kind of ramps up that threat level. Slither and Mucus have been captured, and Ollie appears to still be evil. And I will note that I do like the little touch of this not just being one of those, magic spellcast kind of things. They actually have Sentinels acting as cameramen, and another one as a cameraman, and one as the boom operator, which really just speaks to Bajilia's ego and feels very on point. But we get the big twist of what it is that Zed's going to be doing with the Morphin Master energy, and it's something that's perfectly logical. He's going to turn himself into a Morphin Master. The idea that he was going to steal the energy of the Morphin Masters was something that had been pretty obvious since, they had established that Scrozzle was kind of making suggestions, and, arguably from the first episode of Cosmic Fury when they first captured them, the magic mentors trapped in a tube, very Power Rangers in space. The idea of draining their energy just seems perfectly logical. And truth be told, I had seen little spoilers, unfortunately, through social media that were not, properly shielded from my eyes of Zed's new form that we see later in the episode. But I hadn't really connected with the idea that, oh, he's turning himself into a Morphin Master. He's not just using their energy, he's actually becoming like them. He's becoming one of them. And that really justified the design of that power-up costume a lot more to me once I knew that it was drawing the aesthetics from that. Once I'm like, oh, I saw that picture, now I understand the context for that picture, that makes sense. Because otherwise, I'm not going to lie. Yes, Master Zed does, evoke the look of the Morphin Masters, but let's be real. He is 100% Super Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: The Secret of the Ooze from back in 1992. Like, no question. He looks so much like Super Shredder. It's hilarious. I have no idea if that was at all an influence on the design, but they hit the Super Shredder vibe so hard. And considering that was my favorite movie back when I was, 7 years old, um, um, I do appreciate that, even if it seemed, you know, initially when I saw the leaked image, it felt like it might be a little silly for Zed to get this power up form, just because it felt like something that didn't really make sense to the character outside the context of him becoming a Morphin Master. Once I realized that, I'm like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. Still a little silly looking, but in kind of a good campy way. Um, so the reveal that he's got Bajilia back, that that he is intending to become a Morphin Master, that really kind of ramped up the threat going into this finale. Um, Combined with the reveal that yes, finally Ollie is free for him to unleash that information through the broadcast, um, I thought really, uh, set a good level of stakes for this episode. It's like, oh, Zed's got a big master plan, and Ollie's free, but he's in trouble. And Bajilia is back, and that's, so there's even more barriers between us and what we want, and there's a big threat coming. And these were some things that I felt were, to a degree, missing from a lot of the series was the clarity of the threat. The clarity of the threat has not really been there for most of the series until now. The idea of Zed becoming a Morphin Master is a very clear threat. Because Zed has been a threat in the past, but not a galaxy, universe spanning threat. He was never at a universe level. He was never at the same level as Dark Spectre. And Bajilia, even though she provides all this new support for him to have this massive army, is a character that had not been treated as an intimidating figure up until this point, really. They really seem to lean into the comic relief with Bajilia and Squilia, and really seem to be trying to direct the characters to really see Zed as more the primary threat. But since he had never been at that universe-threatening level before, holding him above Bajilia made it feel like it always kind of made it feel like, okay, we're not really at this level of threat that the show seems to be leaning into. Someone who could be threatening every ranger throughout history. They're justifying certain elements of the story with like the technology that Bajilia provides, the anti-Zord fields, etc. But that lean into Zed over Bajilia always kept it a little bit stretching the bounds of that suspension of disbelief. With Dark Spectre, we knew that he was the big guy that everybody was scared of. He brought together all these villains, all working together. You felt that level of threat that we couldn't really get from Bajilia up until this point. But here, with the idea of, oh, Zed with Morphin Master Power, that is a genuine, major threat, potentially unstoppable threat. Okay, I'm here with you. I'm ready to see where this goes. And it's combined with the knowledge that Zato may not have much time left. That has been steadily built up throughout the season, and we know that, if he uses his magic again, that may be the last time. So that's another level of personal stakes. They're afraid of losing Ollie to Zed. They're afraid of losing Zato to the Morphin Grid. So this is really pushing things for the characters. And also, I do like that we finally had the actual fake out of, we think Ollie's evil, but he's actually good now, that I kept thinking was happening earlier in the season. So it was great to finally see that actually happen. and for him to actually use that bit of cunning that I always knew was some part of Ollie's character, and I figured he was going to end up finally using whenever he became good again. Um, but as we have this big, okay, we need to go stop Zed, we need to save Ollie, we're going to Eltar, which of course is, a great location for this big showdown. Um, we have this little moment before they go between Amelia and Billy that is yet another thing that I wish had been in the rest of the season more. Um, this moment between Amelia and Billy is frankly excellent because it's the first true one-on-one moment of mentorship that I feel like we actually get out of Billy. He's not just being the backup guy on support. He's not just, being the tech guy off doing his own thing off screen. This is him actively conveying advice and guidance to one of the Rangers. And it's Amelia who's the leader. And they have this great moment where it's like, you know, I trust you, you trust me, we each need to do what we've got to do, and we each appreciate one another's um, sense of what that right thing is. Um, Billy is very much coming from this um, perspective of experience, where Amelia is having to weigh that against what's most important to her team. And Billy doesn't press it. He's like, look, these are your options, and I want you to know what they are. Because if you go, you're going alone. He's been there as a backup ranger. He's been part of a number of fights, but this is him really taking on that mentorship role, um, and acknowledging, you know, and Amelia really fully embracing her role as leader, where she has that confidence now that she can even, you know, that she can even accept and then choose not to follow um, the advice of a veteran ranger. And that's just tremendous character growth for her. It's a very good, strong moment for Billy that also feels like a moment of growth. Um, because I feel like really tend to happen more with Zach. Zach was the one who was, trying to give the words of wisdom to Min in Once and Always. And this is Billy's chance to do that. And so I think this was a very well written scene, and it gave um, some excellent rationale behind some things, and tied well into the larger scope of the events. Um, that all the Ranger teams, now that they're free, are all fighting to push back the armies of Zed, and that's keeping them all busy. That makes sense. He needs to go join his team. That makes sense. And the idea that there are all these alien refugees now that are all being funneled to New Tech City was just a wonderful touch. We knew that we were coming up on the SPD timeline, this whole time, Power Rangers SPD coming in 2025. And knowing that they were in 2023 and the fans had been talking about it for so long and they were having a space season, we all kind of felt like there had to be an acknowledgement of SPD, and I feel like this was one that felt very natural, without, overtaking too much prominence. Now, obviously, New Tech City was very well established by the time of SPD. We had, things like them having been established as early as 2001, but this kind of still provides us with something that explains that transition. And especially without there being a Power Ranger series planned for 2024, we can only imagine what would take place across the course of that timeline leading up into Power Rangers SPD. It feels like it's knitting things together very well. Just a nice little bit of fan service. So I've praised that scene enough. They go to Eltar. We get this quick little um, fight against Inkworth, which frankly is probably the best Zord fight that we've gotten all season. Um, the Zords have really taken a back seat for the most part this season, so this one is probably the best one that we've got. Still a little quick. Nice to see the Cosmic Fury Ultra Zord. Still need to find the helmet for Ryu Voyager, but I will admit this also highlights sort of the limitations of the Zord footage that they've used for all this. And when it comes to uh, this really established that um, they were only going to ever be able to use so much Q Ranger footage in a 10 episode season with so much focus on original footage. The Zord fights have been kept pretty short, um, fairly low stakes throughout the course of this season. Um, we don't have that real sense of uh, grandiosity that we can sometimes get from the reveal of new Zords or new Zord formations. That's something where I feel like that's, as I've talked about a number of times before, that sacrifice of spectacle for the sake of story. And it also meant that we were only going to be able to fit in so many Zords. There were a lot of Zords in Q Ranger due to the large number of Rangers. Not as many as some seasons, but still a good number. Like 13, 14, depending upon what you count. But we were only ever really going to get those first 11. Trying to get into Ho Voyager and Q Majin, if I remember the names correctly, realistically we weren't going to get to see that. So it is sort of unfortunate that um, you know as much as I do appreciate the formation, I usually keep these guys in this formation. Um, oh, even though I actually have the arms kind of swapped right now from the actual version of the formation. Um, we we don't get to see the one that's actually the thing that's closest to an Ultra Zord in the source material. So it for those of you who have seen Q Ranger, it feels less like that Ultra Zord moment and feels like just something more along the lines. Um, thank you very much, Mac. I appreciate the I appreciate the congratulations. Um, so with the fight against Inkworth, which is a fun fight, and Inkworth I actually have rather enjoyed as a character. Where I have criticized the goofiness of Bajilia and Squillia to an extent in the past, I've always liked Inkworth's um, very proper British butler characterization. It's very different from Ikargen, his Sentai counterpart, but not one that ever really felt like they were um, dumbing him down, um, which it has felt like they've done with a number of the other Q Ranger monster suits, with like Dewdrip, for example. Um, felt obviously very goofy compared to his much more menacing character in Q Ranger. Ikargen was an assassin in the original. Here, but he was sort of a gentlemanly assassin, and translating him into a butler is less of a stretch. And frankly, he's still a very competent fighter, as we see. Um, and so you get some good lines in there. Tell tell your friends the butler did it. Like we get some cute little jokes in there. I will admit that the assault on Zed's fortress does go by a little quick. It feels a little underprotected after all that build up from Billy that Zed wasn't going to let Eltar go without a fight. We don't have any Squidrow backups or Copyguard backups. It's just Inkworth, which frankly should feel like something of a red flag that this is a little too easy for them. We do get that nice little break-in fight. We get the freeing of Ollie. We get the freeing of Mucus and Slither. Um, and them, kind of being like, okay, he's going to use the Master Captivator to become Morphin Master, which felt like it was already kind of conveyed earlier. But then when they go to escape, we have you know, first little turnaround betrayal from Bajilia, as we find out, okay, Ollie was bait. They were lured into a trap. The whole fortress is shut down around them. There's no way out. Their teleportation is blocked. Their morphing is blocked. And we're about to have this little countdown to self-destruction, which that nod of that being the first nod to countdown to destruction in this episode was again appreciated, even if it was a little silly. I got a little eye roll out of that, but I kind of chuckled at that. And we even get like little nods, from what I understand, just double checking on like Ranger Wiki in the trivia section, things that I'm not 100% certain are true, but I'm kind of fascinated by. This was apparently the first time that the Rangers had in series used the phrase "power down" since Jungle Fury, which is wild to me if that is true. And if it is, I appreciate that little detail. When they all demorph to reunite with Ollie. But that trap is really one of our first real glimpses into Bajilia's cunning. We knew that she's a competent evil CEO, but this is really her first time like engaging in active trickery, rather than offloading things onto her employees. And we have that moment of, okay, there's no way out. This is actually this is the one time when Zato uses his magic that I felt like it was absolutely earned. It absolutely made sense. He needs to save his team, and there's no other way out. The Morphin Master magic has been established as a means by which to generate a shield of protection. Everything about that made sense. This was not so much him pushing things, him sacrificing himself. This was him actually having to make the hard choice, and everybody there knew it. And there was no avoiding it. And then we see, after the smoke is cleared, he's passed out. In comes the opening to the morphin grid as he's taken away. And it's heartbreaking. You don't want this for them. And we have that moment of Ion just refusing to let go, and you see even Ion's spirit leaves his body as Zato's spirit is absorbed back into the morphin grid. There's nothing left except for basically his morpher and the Morphin Master staff. And now they're back down to the stripped down team. They're back down to only 5. And now that Ollie is back. And now we're getting into, okay, how do we stop Zed? How do we stop Zed? And that whole, big final showdown that they're going into, they've lost Zato. Ion's passed out. They don't know what's going on with him. And we see that there still is now a morpher unaccounted for again. And that one goes to Ollie. And now he finally gets to be back with his team. And I thought that was a very clever use of the morphers. We had established that there were 6 morphers early on. Initially, Ollie's morpher went to Fern, so now Zato's morpher goes on to Ollie. So we only ever have 6 Rangers at a given time, which makes the opening credits such a lie. But for the next episode, we'll talk about that then. but this is an unfortunate farewell to Zato as the Zenith Ranger. I've talked about before how um, regrettably underutilized that form has been in battle. We get to see it briefly during the strike on Zed's fortress, um, but he always just felt like he was, the squishy wizard of the group, and not, the Zenith Ranger, that ultimate Ranger that he was sort of presented as. Um, I kind of want to see that cape in action a little bit more. But the farewell is still one that feels, fitting and bittersweet. And we go into the big fight against Zed. He's got his apotheosis throne. He takes on his Super Shredder form. Um, Probably would have been good to try and actually do a sneak attack while he was still on the throne, rather than after he got off of it, all fully charged up. Well, seemed to be a little acknowledgement of the tubes covering his body, giving him that extra energy. And we get to see their weapon combo for the first time ever with the Cosmic Fury cannon, if that was the name of it. I'm blanking now on what the name of it actually was. But that weapon is, I will admit, a little silly, because the weapons don't actually fit together in any meaningful way, and I believe that the production team even admitted that they kind of didn't really have the time budget to work out exactly how these 6 weapons were going to fit together, and they just kind of winged it with the CG, and just quick close up of the different faces on the different weapons, and now it's all one big thing. I would have liked to see it actually actually all come together, but you work with what you got. And then of course it doesn't work. And I was a little really, did they really think that was actually going to work? They weren't going to try and use that on, as a means to try and prevent him from getting this power. This was going to be something they were going to try and use him once he had this power. You kind of feel like they had to know this wasn't going to work. Just once he has the power of the Morphin Masters, he's on just such another level. We do and we also kind of cut into things a little bit with the jokiness of the N versus the Z, which it's a funny gag that was set up earlier with the ice cubes, with Zed and Inkworth in an earlier episode. But it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, is this really what we're looking at for the final showdown? Okay, he gets his super powerful form, and they think that just a weapon is going to take him out. What's the big thing going on here? What are we going to be dealing with going into the next episode? And then there's also, they summon the Zords, and then all the Zords get blown up, and it just felt like a very a fittingly anticlimactic end to the Cosmic Fury Zords that had gotten such a low level of focus during the course of this season. They're just boom, 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 boom. I'm like, guys, this isn't work. Why don't you just get them out of the... Okay, they're not going to try and retreat and save any of them. Okay. So I'm like, okay. During this, I was hoping that there'd be a little bit more to this showdown, but it's feeling a little bit like these are just the big things that have to happen. And then they're like, wait, we can use the Master Captivator on him. It captures Masters. I'm like, okay, yeah, there you go. And I'm like, that seems like a good idea. And then Scrozzle shows up. And I'm like, oh no, now it's protected. Now they're not going to get to it. And then Scrozzle turns the Master Captivator on Zed. And I'm like, what? But Jillian's like, no. And they're like, wait, what's happening? And then they capture Zed with the Master Captivator. I'm like, what's happening? And then she's doing her whole interview with the alien interviewer guy, who I don't believe actually was presented with a name, as far as I could tell. But what was played by apparently Steve McCleary, who's their ADR writer, which is great. Um, and yeah, I love how they keep bringing these characters in. And then they revealed this big master plan that yes, Zed was actually a sort of a pawn in all of this. He was always really just a tool for what they wanted to accomplish. They were planning for this the whole time. I'm like, yes, yes, this makes it work. This makes it work. Zed has been a figurehead. He has been. They have just been building up his ego this whole time just to leave him vulnerable to this moment. So that all makes perfect sense to me. And then I'm like, well, but why? What's the reason? What's the reason? And then they explain that they intend to unleash the wave of evil to destroy all the good in the universe. And I'm just losing it at this point because I'm recognizing fully, and they're acknowledging fully, that they are trying to pull a reverse countdown to destruction. They're trying to pull an inverted Z wave. And that that was really the moment where I was losing it. Because I if there was a way if there was if there was a way to try and replicate the stakes of Countdown to Destruction, this was a great way to do it. This is a great evil plan. I love it. I feel like it's very fitting. It's honoring the past. It's an extremely high level of stakes. It feels in character for the villains. It explains my issues that I was having with the villains up until this point. It's very similar to Lothor's evil plan from Ninja Storm, where he was basically obfuscating stupidity throughout the season just to lure his other villains into a false sense of security for them to be sacrificed for his plan, um, and cements Vigilia as actually the true mastermind of the season, as she really should be considered. Um, so I loved everything about this twist. Um, there were obviously things that I was a little not completely on board with on the lead up to it. It left me feeling somewhat dissatisfied at times getting to this point, but then the hit of the twist was just excellent, and it kind of redeems a lot of that in my eyes. Not that the Cosmic Fury really has needed that much redemption, because it has already been very strong and very fun. Um, and I've been praising it throughout the course of this last month. Um, but obviously, you know, I'm a I'm a critic. An internet critic, not obviously not an actual professional journalist or anything. But it's always been my role with this channel to critique the series, and there's always going to be things to critique, and there's always going to be positives and negatives. And I felt like this was something that vindicated um, some of what I had been seeing as somewhat negatives up until this point. I would have liked to see the villains taken a little bit more seriously before now, but if this was what you were going for, I see why you went for it. I respect the choices made here, and I love the actual twist itself. And the characters are just having so much fun with this reveal. The writers are having fun. We even get, the little explanation of how it all came together. We have Scrozzle jokingly using a Lord Zed voice, and he gets the compliment for being good with voices, which is obviously a shout out to Campbell Cooley and all the work that he's done on the franchise up until this point. Hi, Campbell, if you're watching this. I know that he's been a fan of our channel as well. And I think that was a great nod, considering he's playing both Scrozzle and Slither in this episode. Two fun villains that he's been playing up until this point. So all this stuff going on, and then of course the icing on the cake is that the episode ends on a literal countdown. And that literal countdown is just, I'm just like, okay, you're laying it on thick. Yes, this is all Countdown to Destruction, honoring that episode. Yes, I'm here. You're laying it on thick, but I'm here for it. Um, and just and combined with like the twist of the Sentinels grabbing the cannon, the Cosmic Fury cannon, and turning it on the Master Captivator, and that it, again calling back to Zordon in his tube, but not just the capture of Zordon and the draining of power, but the actual use of it as a conflict resolving plot device in Countdown to Destruction. So, as I said before, if you have to go big with a finale and you want to honor the history of Power Rangers, the fact they chose this year to honor Countdown to Destruction on its 25th anniversary, I really appreciate. With the combination of Once and Always and Cosmic Fury, I feel like Once and Always did a really good job of setting the stage for Cosmic Fury in ways that I wasn't expecting it to. It reintroduced us to Billy, and it reintroduced, in a more meaningful sense, the Z-Wave, after it had been previously referenced with the return of Zed in the first season of Dino Fury with Old Foes. But the fact that Z-Wave was so prominent to two different anniversary celebrations this year, both both Once and Always and Cosmic Fury, really, really did my heart good. After feeling like it had been such an ignored part of the lore for so many years, and then get so much love here. So that obviously brought a smile to my face. This episode is another one where there's just so much happening. I've spent the last like 40 minutes talking about it. So many things being addressed along the way. It again feels like this is more than one episode, like so many of them have. The Zord fight again, just kind of in the middle of the episode, and then it's gone real quick. We don't have that typical Power Ranger structure here. We have something very different when it comes to Cosmic Fury. When it comes to how episodes are actually structured, we don't really have the introduce the monster, Rangers fight the putties, Ranger fight the monster, retreat, come back, monster grows big, they fight the monster with the Megazord, everything gets resolved. We don't have really any episodes this season structured that way, which is kind of fascinating in its own right. It's always been more along the lines of, okay, we are running through this story, we'll have the Zord fight somewhere in the middle, and then we actually get back to the real story, because that's where the actual culmination of this plot arc is for this episode. And this episode, has, multiple moments that you could feel would be the climax of any other episode. It almost feels like we're having more of a, it doesn't even feel like it's a 5-act structure like I would characterize classic Power Rangers. You have the introduction, the rising action, the complication, the climax, and the denouement. Which I always described as problem of the day, putty fight, monster fight, Zord fight, Bulk and Skull do something stupid. Is basically the 5-act structure of classic Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But here, the rising action is the Zord fight. The complication is the loss of Zato. The climax is not actually the Rangers fighting, but the villains enacting their master plan. with the denouement being that countdown to destruction at the very end. Um, so a very different take on that 5 act structure. Um, it's still a 5 act structure, but it's not the one that you're used to from Power Rangers. And I've been trying to kind of put my finger on it. I think this is where I can really um, do so a little bit more concretely because we have these very clear portions of the episode. Um, as I've kind of laid them out, we have that introduction where we have the whole bit with Amelia and Billy. We have the rising action, which is the fight with Inkworth and um, the storming of Zed's castle. We have the complication with Basilia's trap and the loss of Zato. We have the climax with the fight against Master Zed and his ultimate capture, and then the denouement with the big reveal of all the planning that had gone into getting to this point. Um, so very good, just kind of almost subversive take on the classic Power Ranger story structure. Um, and it's just it's all of it is just such a fascinating um, set of subversion of expectations in so many respects. Um, the fact that we don't get our 5th Corps Ranger until we've already lost our ostensible 6th Ranger. Um, just all these different unspoken rules of how Power Rangers operates are being kind of broken and bent while also honoring the history of the franchise and just having a fun time. And as somebody who really leans into that structure, that story structure element of the series, um, part of me kind of fights against it sometimes, but the other part of me is just fascinated by it. So very strong episode. Master Plan, um, I right down to the name, the fact that it is not just Zed's master plan, it's Bajilia's actual master plan, and it's a plan involving Zed as a Morphin Master. Um, and just I think I've probably praised this episode enough at this point. A very very strong um, lead in to the finale, with just a few moments that felt like they were kind of maybe leaning into some things a little too hard, and other things maybe felt a little rushed, um, or other opportunities feel like they may have been squandered, but things that were not necessarily the fault of this episode. Um, these are things where you know the series is only 10 episodes and it's not going to have enough time to breathe. So they need to keep that pace going hard. And yeah, it's a banger. It's a banger of an episode. So um, I guess with that, there's no more putting it off. Time to take a look at episode 10 of Power Rangers Cosmic Fury. The end. Um, and that episode title kind of says it all in so many respects. So our little Netflix description here. If Team Cosmic Fury can't stabilize the Master Captivator, a wave of pure evil threatens to wipe out all the good in the universe. No pressure, right? So, this episode, once again, we are getting this love letter to the franchise. This is one where they're doing something that other past, series finales haven't really been able to do. Um, you know, when it came to RPM, they were just working to have a satisfying ending to their story, and that would be a fitting way to end Power Rangers. Because at that point, the franchise had really become, while there was some points of connection, a series of very loosely connected stories, and you just wanted the final story to be a really satisfying one, and it was. RPM ended on a rather satisfying note. We have Countdown to Destruction, which is obviously just such a classic finale. Where with that one they were really focused on kind of wrapping up all their plot threads, and wrapping up you know the their story very well, while also tying off what they had set up at the beginning, tying off the previous 5 seasons worth. And I thought they handled that spectacularly well. The emotions were high, the stakes were high, the scope was high. You saw all these corners of the universe. Countdown to Destruction is just a masterpiece for me, as far as Power Rangers goes. But this one, the end, we are not just seeing the wrap up of the story, we are getting an actual send off to the franchise. Um, this is one where they clearly had the time and the intent to build up to saying farewell to this series. Um, and I think that they managed that very well here. We get this all these acknowledgments to the past, all these nods to the past, in a way that those previous endings were never really going to do. Um, they were very focused on bringing an end to their individual stories. And with Dino Fury, we already technically had that end. And then this is an end built upon that is intended from the beginning to be a farewell tour to all this work that the writers and producers had done on Power Rangers up until this point, and to the stories and the characters that acted as points of inspiration to them. You want to feel this sense of things coming full circle in a lot of different ways. And I think that the end successfully did that. Is it perfect? There's no perfect episode. That's not something that can happen. But let's dig into what is happening here. We open with Ion in this mysterious liminal space, which is, definitely like a no, audience, you don't actually get to see the resolution of that cliffhanger from the previous episode quite yet kind of move, which I respect. As a viewer, I'm like, oh no, I want to see what's happening, but I respect the choice. Make them wait for it. And we see him approach what looks to be Zeta. And this whole thing with him and the not Zato in the morphing grid, it was such a fascinating choice to me that I did not really see coming. And it's hilarious because I kind of did this story. I arguably did the story that's Ion subplot from this episode. It's Ion's basically hanging out in episode 97 of Power Reviews, which I'm watching this. I'm like, we are on the same wavelength again. I keep being on the same wavelength as the writers, and part of me is like, are they watching power reviews and getting ideas, or are we just that in sync? Um, and I can only trust that it's just that we're strange minds think alike. Um, I would be honored if they were actually taking any inspiration from power reviews or grid defense or any of my work. I'm not going to assume that they actually are. Um, they've already expressed in the past when I've spoken to some of the people who work with the franchise that um, they have legal limitations on what sort of fan works they can observe. Um, so obviously they're not actually taking inspiration from my work. We're just strange minds think alike, and I would have loved to have been in that room and to have been working on this series, but life takes different paths. Um, and yeah, could this episode have been an hour long? Yeah, probably. So there's so many different opportunities that we could have had for more of the story here, but this one actually doesn't feel quite so hurried as I think some of the others do. Maybe some parts of it, could have been stretched out. Like maybe if this master plan were like a three-parter, then maybe part two would have been, the big escape with the master captivator while Ion is trapped in the Morphin Grid, and we don't get to see Ion return from the Morphin Grid until the third episode. If this had been like a trilogy, um, but picking back up where we left off on Eltar, the very um, the very fun moment of Slither and Mucus stealing the Squidrill and shooting out the Sentinels and all that. Is a fist pump moment there. Um, it felt like it was a little bit stretching the bounds of credulity there. That they would have been able to take over a Squidrill quite that fast. But you're just you're here for the ride. You recognize that the countdown was part of the reference that they were doing for their cliffhanger in the previous episode. But realistically, Slither and Mucus probably should have been um, taking action a little sooner. In order for them to realistically have had a Squidrill under their command by then. But we do get that big distress signal, which is obviously something that I'm also doing with power reviews, although mine has not been able to pan out like theirs for various reasons in my story. And we get to see the weaponization of teleporting again, just the very effective use of teleporting through Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury is something I've praised a lot. And the fact they use it to just quickly go, whoop, we're taking the Master Captivator, whoop, and away they go. I thought was handled very well. And then we have this big, escape through the barricade of all the Squidrills, which felt like out of the movie Serenity, although in Serenity it was the dive towards a planet, this was the escape from a planet. Or maybe more so a reference to Legendary Battle, when Troy and Orion were making their big B run for the Armada warship. That these were the kind of vibes we were getting as they were doing this big crazy run through all this laser fire, and it's just very much okay. Yeah, we're getting this. This is the space battle that we've been wanting to see all season, because we have the Rangers in space. You want to see a space battle here. We finally get that space battle as they're charging through the Squidrills, and it's all original CG and looking fun. it's looking about as good as you can expect from Power Rangers. And then we get the big, the cavalry arrives with the 5 Megazords, and that's something that, Countdown to Destruction could never. Countdown to Destruction does a bunch of fantastic things, but its final episode is very grounded with that, with the Ranger fight, and this is, I've criticized the use of Zords throughout this season. This is the big, hey, the Zords are all here. It moves by very quickly, but this is probably the biggest triumph moment that we get with Zords. Even more so than the actual introduction of the Cosmic Fury Zords or the Cosmic Fury Dragon Zord during the course of this season. We get the original Mighty Morphin Megazord, the Astro Megazord, the Galaxy Megazord, the Ninja Blaze Megazord, and the Beast X Megazord, which were both kind of surprising. All of these very surprising. And I'm still choosing to work off the assumption that the Galaxy Megazord is crossing dimensions. We got a portal. The Galaxy Rangers have never once appeared without the use of a portal. I'm still keeping Miranoi in that other dimension. They're in the RPM timeline. You can't take this from me. So we've got this big CG fest of Zords. It's a little busy. It's a little hard to follow. I'll admit that the Ninja Blaze Megazord, I almost lost sight of just because everything was moving so fast, and they were also very shiny. Just arguably a little too shiny with those textures. But still, great to see those Zords all in play. That feeling that all these Rangers are involved. If we had a little bit more time, we could have maybe had a little bit more acknowledgement of those individual Ranger teams, but time and budget, just seeing that was just a very nice continuity nod. It was not something for the sake of picking up of really resolving a plot point or wrapping up a story, like we were seeing in those previous major finales. This was something specifically like, hey, fans, didn't you always want to see a bunch of Megazords from a bunch of different seasons come together to help do a giant space battle? Let's do that for you. And that's what a lot of Cosmic Fury feels like. It's like, hey, guys, you always wanted to see this. This could be our last chance to do it. Let's do it. Let's go for it. Let's get CG models of 5 different Megazords for a big space battle. Like, this was the sort of thing that they wanted to do for Forever Red, and they couldn't. This is something that, we've wanted to see from these big finales in the past, and we could never actually see it pulled off. And they finally did it here. They finally found the budget and opportunity and the time to actually pull that off, even if it is a very quick little moment. And it's fine that it's quick. It's. I would have liked to see a little bit of a better composed fight scene, where I could have had a little bit more time to enjoy seeing all these Megazords again. But I recognize the pacing of the story doesn't really allow for that. There's, again, we gotta go. And that's probably one of the few bits where it feels the most rushed, if anything. And yes, we get to see that cockpit footage of Billy and Min, or who we can assume is Min. It could be Aisha, but it's likely Min, considering that they've been acknowledging Once and Always. I do really like that we get these little moments of acknowledging Once and Always through the recycled use of their set pieces. In a previous episode, we got to see Billy at Cranston Tech with Alpha 9 in the background, and then this episode, we get to see him in the Megazord cockpit with Min in the background. And I felt like, again, it's like, yeah, you have those sets, use them. Um, I don't know if it was that they used them while they were filming Once and Always, or if they were just like something that they tossed in for a green screen background behind Billy. I'm not sure how those were implemented. Um, I know there was a big interview with there was a big Q&A. I'm sorry, Q&A with Simon Bennett, and I haven't had a chance to really listen to all of it yet. And I'm sorry. um, I want to always try and go into these as well researched as I can. Um, but the main reason I'm doing these unscripted reviews is due to limited time and attention. Um, but yeah, it's great to see that and then they have these other big plans of what to do, how to deal with the threat of the potentially cracking Master Captivator um, that the Sentinels initially tried to blow up with that Cosmic Fury cannon. We get the idea of, hey, set it off inside the morphing grid, which is just like, what would happen? What would happen? I don't know. And the return to Zordnia from the beginning of the season. And again, that feeling of things coming full circle. And the Rangers have this big plan that's all very exciting. And we get this big showdown with Bajilia, um, who's still looking to resolve her plan. And this is a more high tension fight than the fight against Master Zed was in the previous episode, because with the fight against Master Zed, you had the feeling, okay, they're not going to be able to put a dent in him. There needs to be some other story explanation for how this fight goes. But with this one against Bajilia, it's different because she is not the threat per se. She does not need to beat them in this fight. She just needs to get one shot past them. And that's something that's very realistic for her to be able to accomplish, but not something that's a guarantee that she'll accomplish. And so this creates a much higher tension for this fight, because they managed to make the villain a very real threat without the villain being a massive physical threat. And I thought that was a very nice showdown with this villain character. And we get the final destruction of Bajilia with the Cosmic Fury cannon, which is fine. And then we get that little moment where the gun falls after she's blown up, and it fires off that one shot to further crack the Master Captivator. And everybody's just like, really? Come on. And all of this is taking place after we had that whole big lead up of how they're going to open up the entryway to the morphing grid, which is using the Morphin Master staff again, potentially endangering Javi again, who lost an arm the first time, and then deciding they need to do this all together before Bajilia interrupts, and they all have to morph. And I will say that while I did acknowledge in the previous episode how much I liked that they were able to make good use of the fact there were only 6 morphers, so there was kind of this Ranger trade-off going on throughout the season. It is a shame the only place we get to see all 7 Rangers is in the opening credits of this episode. I really would have liked to have seen the Zenith Ranger more engaged with battle. I would have liked to have seen him have a chance to fight alongside Ollie. And it's not so much a criticism as it is, just kind of sad that we didn't get that opportunity. And we have that question of, would all of them grabbing the Morphin Master staff together have saved Javi from the loss of his arm in that first episode with lightning strikes, or not? And unfortunately, we don't get an answer to that here. You appreciate the emotional value of them all standing together, but it is a shame that we don't get that emotional resolution. I think I would have liked for them to actually have gone for it, rather than being interrupted here as they are by Zato. The big return of Zato from the Morphin Grid as a Morphin Master is obviously a great moment, but I think that, I would have liked to have gotten that little bit of extra satisfaction to be like, yes, the key was actually standing together, which we don't get confirmation on here. Because this was, they were going to open up the this portal to the Morphin Grid and throw the Master Captivator in. But what if they had done that and then Zato showed up? Like, they open up the portal and that's how Zato escapes. But I think that was a little bit of a missed opportunity for resolution to that emotional beat. Which, felt like something they were going for with the theme, but didn't quite hit. This idea that they are stronger together than they are as individuals, and that they all bring something to the team. We are sort of lacking in those clear thematics in terms of something that I feel could have made this season a little bit stronger, for having sort of a clear sense of a underlying message throughout. There's a lot going on with story. Every character has their own story. We're doing this whole love letter to the whole franchise, but little things that I think could have made it gel a little bit better would have been a stronger overarching theme for that story. A little bit of a stronger arc to the villains, a little bit of a strong, some more stronger through lines, clear story engine. These were all things that I felt could have just made it gel a little stronger. I think overall, still great story, lot of fun. The characters are all being served throughout the course of this season, and it comes down to just, okay, but what is the theme here? What is the underlying message? What's the, not exactly the moral of the day, but sort of this, if there were a moral to be taken away from this season, what would that be? Past seasons that had a stronger sense of that would be like Time Force, where there's that whole sense of you make your own destiny. Being an underlying theme of that season. The with SPD, them kind of coming into their own and it being a coming of age story almost, as the B Squad recognizes that they're fine with being the B Squad. Things like that. And while every character does learn and grow through their own individual arcs across the course of this season, there doesn't seem to be necessarily a clear arc of the team's evolution. And it's a really little minor thing, and this would just be like, okay, what could make this season even stronger? Not, saying, I don't like this season because it's missing this. It's not something that every season has. It's just something that, if we're looking for things that could make the season stronger, what would they be? Because there's always something. There's always something. And that I think is, where I feel like if we were only going to have these 10 episodes, how could we help them hit just that little bit stronger? That's frequently my perspective when I'm doing these analyses. What what could we learn from this? What how can we continue to improve? Even if this is, the end of Power Rangers in its current form. Um, what could the new what can we learn for the new version of Power Rangers, whatever that may be? Um, and how can we learn how to become better storytellers in our own lives, if that's something that you're pursuing? That is something I always have had an interest in, how I can make myself into a better storyteller. Um, I really like what I've managed to craft with Database Rangers Power Reviews, but it's also just one particular story, and there's just so many different stories that you can tell. Um, so, so with all that, getting back to the episode itself, I kind of went off on a bit of a big tangent there. We have, clearly a sort of a callback to that little nod they had in the pit. We have that sort of culmination of Ollie's arc with Zed, which has been an interesting arc. Because Zed is not usually a character who gets much of an arc, and we do get a little bit of one for him here, um, as he has to, as his whole ethos was kind of conveyed in the earlier conversation with Ollie from that earlier episode, and it's tossed back at him here, and he needs to acknowledge that he values survival over power, which is true. He has fled from threats before. He surrendered the moon to the Machine Empire at the beginning of Zeo. He's not above, taking a loss. It is a little funny that he says that he doesn't make deals with Rangers when he has previously made deals with Rangers. I think it's more so that he's trying to say he doesn't make deals with Rangers on their terms. Since the deal that I'm thinking of is primarily Enchanting of the Zords, where he convinced the Rangers to work for him. But I get the intent of it. We also get him saying ninnies quite a few more times, which is something that he said back in the earlier episodes of Mighty Morphin. And I do feel like at this point, where Zed surrenders his power, we see that Fred Tadascore, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, has finally, I think, settled into the role of Zed at this point. And it's been a voice that I've been back and forth on a little bit. And part of that does come down to the writing, and part of that does come down to the physical performance. But the last moment after he lets go of the power, and he's sent to Nibiru, and there's that illusion of Rita Repulsa, which was just such a bizarre thing when you're not quite sure what's going on quite yet. And we have this last moment of him, being trapped in the nightmare of being with his wife, which is sort of like a fascinating nightmare for him to have. And a nice little callback to have, Rita appear ostensibly in the final episode, even though it's definitely a bit of an odd looking Rita. I think I imagine they're likely using much of the costume from Robo Rita, which I imagine must have had a slightly larger head, because something's weird going on with the hair there. But I also have to give it up to Susan Brady here, who apparently voiced Rita in this finale after previously having voiced Mystic Mother, which is a nice little callback. You would have preferred, obviously, to have Barbara Goodson back, especially when she was just back for Once and Always, but I guess that just wasn't an opportunity for this specific episode. But if it wasn't going to be her, at least it was someone who had also played the character in the past. And she feels like she's got a stronger command on the voice here, and they play off each other, I think, rather well here in this final moment, where it's not Robert Axelrod and it's not Barbara Goodson, but um, it feels like the characters are still there, and that's what you're looking for when you get things like this. And the the use of Nibiru I thought was very clever. Um, Very good, strong use of their continuity, that world they've been built up, and it's handled well because it's something that is touched on at the beginning of the episode when Ion thinks that he's in Nibiru, or that he's on Nibiru again because of the illusions that he's facing, where it's Zato but not really Zato. Um, it is something that feels a little sudden to be brought back, um, but uh, was still, I thought, rather clever. And so I appreciate that. It's definitely one of those things where you really need to remember the entire story up until this point of Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury, um, and know the history of Zed and Rita. Excuse me, sorry. For it to really make sense. Um, I was kind of astonished when I was talking to one of my students not too long ago, and I made mention of Power Rangers Cosmic Fury, and they're like, "Oh my God, we're best friends now." And I'm like, "Oh man, you watched Cosmic Fury? I I gotta know how. And I haven't really talked to them too much about it, but I just want to know. I'm like, how how are your feelings on some of these things when I can't imagine that you would have seen some of the original source material. It's like, have you ever watched Power Rangers in Space? No, no, I haven't seen. So I'm just like, oh man, this teenager hasn't seen Power Rangers in Space, and they still really enjoyed Cosmic Fury, even not knowing the references of Power Rangers in Space and Power Rangers SPD, and you know exactly what happened with Zed and Rita and all that. Um, how well do they remember Nibiru? Um, and it's so interesting to me how other people uh, may be experiencing Power Rangers, because I know that most people aren't watching Power Rangers the way I watch Power Rangers. They're not doing it with this ridiculously analytical eye and absurd encyclopedic knowledge. They're doing it with just, hey, this is a lot of fun. I'm just enjoying it. Or hey, I kind of remember that thing. It's cool to see that thing. Um, that I feel is the more common way to watch it. Not diving into story structure, themes, or character arcs and all that. Um, just loving the characters, loving the universe, loving the action and the story. Um, and for the last 11 years, I've been analyzing, I think, from a different perspective than most, and um, I hope that I am providing um, something unique and special in that analysis. So, with that, let's dive into the conclusion of the episode. We have Zato having evolved into a Morphin Master. It feels like a very natural evolution of his character. Um, this is the end of his mortal life. Um, the reasoning behind him having to return to the Morphin Grid with the Morphin Masters is left kind of vague. Um, it does feel like he's sort of tied to the Morphin Grid now. He needs to exist within it. Um, we don't really seem to be aware of any consequences of him not going back, but you just are again kind of rolling with that. Um, it is nice to see that they were able to reconstitute the Morphin Masters, ostensibly using Zato's powers. Um, and he returns off with them, um, and I like the fact that if we do have the Morphin Masters as this you know super powerful set of entities, um, we at least are not going to have to keep worrying about them, being Deus Ex Machina when they're back, with this being the end of the series. Um, for the series to end with the Morphin Masters returning to the Morphin Grid with a new recruit in the form of Zato, um, it does feel like, we had this big thing where we were drawing from the very beginnings of this universe. And now we're kind of coming full circle with those ancient forces returning from whence they came. And of course, the mysterious entity in the Morphin Grid, um, that, we all kind of had that moment. And MJ spotted it slightly before I did, when MJ was just like, hey, thinking about those blue eyes there. And I'm just like, because initially I'm just thinking like, okay, yeah, it's Zato, or it's like, the spirit of the grid. But then MJ pointed out the blue eyes, and I'm like, it's Zordon. We have Zordon, and we have Zordon in the form of Zato. Like, I had seen on Twitter, because I do follow David Fielding on Twitter, that there was sort of this acknowledgement that Zordon came back in the finale, but they didn't bring back David Fielding. I'm like, oh, well, that sounds disappointing. But I thought the way they handled it, through having Russell Curry as this face of Zordon, who otherwise would be an actual face, I thought was a very nice touch and handled very respectfully. We're not just, having that pure fan service of seeing Zordon again. We're having that acknowledgement that Zordon no longer exists in his original form. And him only really being seen through implication. And you're not really sure if it was really him or just echoes of him in the Morphin Grid. And I feel like that is just very fitting. And also just very in line with my own continuity with Power Reviews. As I established before, the Ion story in this episode is borderline episode 97 of Power Reviews. This communing with a version of Zordon that barely even remembers his own history, but he's just like, Rangers, I know that word. Lord Zed, I know that name. That sort of thing. And we get that reveal to Billy at Javi's concert, which is a big, great celebration to wrap things up on, which is always fun. Very much in line with the finale of Dino Thunder, which was another strong season that really honored the past. And yeah. Glad they didn't undercut the importance of Zordon's death, and they actually did let it stick. He wouldn't have known Zordon. His voice wouldn't have had any real meaning to him, unlike Zato's. And it's still it isn't undone. I was honestly concerned when I had heard through social media that Zordon might be appearing in this finale, that they might be undoing Countdown to Destruction. And I'm really glad that they didn't. I'm really glad that instead they paid honor to Countdown to Destruction and sort of homage to Countdown to Destruction with the villain's plan of the evil Z-Wave. Z for Zed this time instead of for Zordon. Which is fitting as well. It's a different kind of Z-Wave. That it would be a Z-Wave instead of a Zordon wave. But the reveal to Billy through Javi's song of "May the Power Protect You," which is a great song to end it on and very heartwarming, really fits well because the "May the Power Protect You" bit was established in the previous episode, Master Plan, with Billy's conversation with Amelia, and then for him to find out that Javi actually got the inspiration from Ion's encounter in the grid is the thing that solidifies for them. Oh, this was Zordon. This may have been Zordon. Um, and we get these final little moments of okay, Billy is back on what he was doing at the end of Once and Always. His mission, you know his his mission to try and find Zordon has been kind of renewed, but with a new sense of purpose. As I kind of delved into during my previous deeper looks at Once and Always, um, and we get to see all these different characters there. We get Mick back. We get to see Dr. Akana is there. The Garcias are there. Pop Pop is there. And we get to see Amelia find out about the birth of her new sister with that nice little. We get to see Tarek and Santora in that image, along with the newborn sister. And that was another little lovely, heartwarming moment when we discovered that the new baby's name is Poppy. I'm not gonna lie, I choked up a little bit at that. That I thought was very sweet. Um, that their hero is Pop Pop for saving Amelia. Um, this is just kind of reminding you that these characters are the core of the story, even though we've gone to off to the far reaches of the Power Rangers universe across the course of this season. Um, this really brought it back home that these characters are the ones who have really been the focus of Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury. Cosmic Fury is a continuation of Dino Fury, and we've done this whole big love letter to the franchise, but we still are also seeing the writers love and respect the characters that are at the heart of it. And that moment of this is Poppy, oh, and you're having the big hobby concert, and then of course when Amelia finds out that Zordon's a ghost, she wants in on the ghost hunt, and that's just kind of a very good the adventure continues kind of way to end things with her. And I thought that was a very nice throwback to the original first episode of Dino Fury. All of that, um, just felt very satisfying as a farewell to these characters. Even more so than we got with the Nemesis, which really set up where they were going in their lives. But this ends it on more of a moment of catharsis, because before they were still dealing with the shock of losing Zato, and here they actually get a chance to say goodbye, and they get this chance to move on in a more meaningful sense. With Zato getting his chance to say goodbye, with the final the final words of the series being "Cool, cool, coolio," which I don't. I love "Cool, cool, coolio," but I don't know if it's necessarily the right final words. But you know what? I'm here for it. It works. It's fine. Um, Zato's, you know, Zato's still Zato, and that's kind of what you need to know. That even though he's ascended to this higher plane of existence, um, he's still himself. He's still this kind of goofy, nice guy. Um, and one of the other really strong moments in this episode is when he does get to say goodbye to Ion, which is all that Ion really wanted. Ion hated that he didn't get a chance to say goodbye to Zato before. He didn't get to say goodbye to Zato in the Nemesis. He didn't get to say goodbye to Zato when Zato got thrown through that portal. He keeps being afraid that he's not going to get to say goodbye to Zato because Zato's going to sacrifice himself without him having a chance to say goodbye. And then he does sacrifice himself in Master Plan, and he's like, no, no, you're not getting away from me this time. You're not getting away from me this time. But here, he gets to say goodbye. Um, and this little exchange of um, your friendship has meant the world, and that's such and that's so true. That's literally true for them. Their friendship saved the world. Ion refusing to let go of his friendship to Zato brought Zato back and allowed him to be able to resolve this universe ending threat. It's then in that moment. Um, so kudos to the writers um, for really delivering a satisfying ending. Um, it. I've given them plenty of feedback over the years. Um, I've criticized so many finales in the past, and I feel like they've learned from their past experiences. They've built off their past experiences, and they've improved, and they've come into their own. And I'm really happy that they got to have this experience of saying goodbye to these characters and this world that they built up, and they clearly have so much love for. Um, I know that there are portions of the fan base that have really harshed on these writers, and you know what? That's always going to be a part of any franchise. There's always going to be some group of whatever fandom that's going to hate whoever is currently in charge of that franchise. That happens, and I'm not going to pretend that there's not valid criticisms to be had, but you can't say that they don't care. Um, they obviously do. There's obviously so much love, so much affection, so much work that went into making Cosmic Fury. Um, that was that was, I think, really what kind of you know that's one of the big things I can take away from all this. That that satisfaction on on their behalf. They delivered a satisfying experience for me, but I'm really really glad they got to have what looked to be such a satisfying experience for themselves as well. Um, yeah, I feel like I'm just kind of repeating myself at this point. So, um, yeah, I've talked a lot about Cosmic Fury across the course of this past month, and, across the course of the last hour and a half as well. I see, in terms of comments, I see, um, I know Scott's been chatting a bit in there. Um, the ambiguity on whether this took place before or after Once and Always. Um, but I'm fairly confident that this takes place after. Um, I know that there were some details that I think solidified it a little bit more strongly that I'm just kind of blanking on at the moment. Just also very tired. Yeah, it's been a long week. Um, but yeah, you can have your critiques of suits or the rushed pacing, um, whether you got everything that you really wanted, but I was very satisfied. I was very pleased. Um, I can't say that it's going to supplant Power Rangers in Space as my favorite season, but I think that really comes down to just Power Rangers in Space being and Countdown Destruction being just so formative for me. I was 13 when that first came out, and just that hit me in all the right ways and really opened up my eyes to what opportunities there were for storytelling. Um, and yeah, MJ, we did see morphed MMPR yellow in the background, but there is nothing to establish specifically which MMPR yellow that was. Um, it could have technically been Trini, although I don't believe that it was. Um, I think I'm trying to remember. I feel like there was something that established Once and Always is taking place before um, before Cosmic Fury. Um, I'm forgetting what that detail is. Um, outside of I believe that Simon Bennett said so explicitly, but I could be mistaken. Um, I I know that they were using the Dino Megazord in there. They had the refurbishing of the cockpit, but that also could have taken place before Cosmic Fury. Um, oh, oh, Trini would have. Trini was gone for a year already. Um, by the time that we had, uh, so I suppose. I mean, I suppose you know if the return of Robo Rita took place right after this, and then no, wait, no, the years don't work right because what was it? Trini, um I believe they had the year that she passed away. Um I would have to double check to see what her tombstone said. That would have been I think that we could establish from the year that on Trini's tombstone that established when Once and Always happens, and then that could further establish its relationship with Cosmic Fury because I believe at one point we can tell what year it is. Um, but I would need to double check for those details. So that's a little tricky. Um, do I see Netflix trying to Western the Kamen Rider series once more once they're done with Cosmic Fury? I I don't see that happening. I haven't seen anyone making moves on that, let alone Netflix operating independently. Um, honestly, um, with the increased access to Japanese media, with you know the rise of the internet over the years, um, I doubt that we're actually going to get further adaptations at this point. Which is honestly kind of heartbreaking to me. Um, I love this art form. I truly do. I love this idea of taking something that already exists and repurposing it into a new context and seeing what new stories you can do with it. Um, it's such an interesting creative exercise, and there's nothing else really quite like it. Um, and it is a shame that this really could be the end of that art form. We I don't think we even had any Sentai footage in this final episode. I think um, the Cosmic Fury Ultra Zord, which is yeah just a two Megazord Ultra Zord. Um, that that I think was the last use of Sentai footage. Um, for the franchise potentially. Um, and it was a good fight. It was a fun fight, but I'm gonna miss this. Um, maybe down the line, maybe I might do something, or another fan might do something. Do another fan film project. I don't know, but but
the episode says, this is the end. I think there's no indication that they intend to continue it in this form. And I mean, I'll admit, Power Rangers has taken on a life of its own and created a world of its own over the course of the last 30 years. The comics have been doing their own thing for a good while. We've had the 2017 movie, which was its own thing. Cosmic Fury is about as close to being its own thing as you're going to get, without fully separating from what came before. Um, so I don't know what this new continuity is going to bring. I'm interested. I'm interested to see it. Um, I don't know if I'll be working on any projects relating to it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the future of this channel is, as I've said before. Um, After the end of this year, assuming, knock on wood, I do finish Power Reviews at the end of this year, I don't know what this channel is going to be. If it's going to continue, maybe I might do some re-uploads at some point, just little remasters of old episodes if the mood strikes me. I don't know. I don't know if I'll go back to that, or if I'm just going to have to also move on to whatever the next thing might be. I'll probably want to try and continue to do um, socially conscious work. We have the big election coming up next year, 2024, and trying to raise awareness on that has always been a big priority for me. And I'd like to be more engaged in my community. And I don't know if this channel could be a tool for that in any way, or if maybe I need to move on to something else. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it all goes here. Kind of a somber note, I know, to kind of wrap things up on. Would I do a review of Love Afterworld Dominion series? I'm not familiar with that series. Love Afterworld. Okay, it's an anime that does the Red Ranger in love with the villain story. That's interesting. Um, Love After World Domination. Interesting. I'd never heard of it. It's on Crunchyroll. It came out in 2022. Interesting. May have to check that out at some point. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing reviews after this year. If something strikes me, maybe I will. But I feel like things are kind of coming to a conclusion, and that I am going to be having to kind of move on to a new phase of my life. I'm going to have a second kid soon, and as much as I've enjoyed a lot of my time with this channel over the course of the last 11 years, it's been a lot of stress, as I'm sure you all know. And I don't know if I'll want to come back to it or not. I don't know if I'll fully stay away. I do have a tendency to keep coming back to things, even years after others might have let things fall to the wayside. We've had plenty of long gaps in Power Reviews, and I never really gave up on it. And I'm working to not give up on it now. Congrats on being the Dad Ranger. And yeah, I saw how Don Brothers got in a mainstream American publication. Someone famous made an Oni sister costume for Halloween, which was very cute. So I'm trying to think if I have anything left to say on Cosmic Fury, um, as we're wrapping this up. Um, but I think I probably said what needed to be said. Um, I love this franchise. I'm gonna miss what it's been, um, but I'm glad that it went out on such a loving note, and I think that's really what you want. You can't always have the big blowout finale. I think that this was pretty big blowout finale as far as Power Ranger finales go, especially in the last few years. Um, but what you really want is for it to be made with love, and I think that it absolutely was. Um, Thanks, John. I try. I don't know how much of this, uh, how much of this is for me versus how much of it is for you. All of that's kind of intertwined, but I'm glad um, that you've all found value in the analyses that I've presented to Power Rangers, and I hope that this has been a satisfying end to those analyses for new Power Rangers episodes. I would have liked, to have a big blowout. Hey, it's the finale of the 30th season. Let me do some big crazy video about it. Time and budget. Time and budget. I'll still have my big blowout finale. It won't be this. It will be for Power Reviews. There's still a lot coming out for 99. I know 98 was a big episode that I hope that you all found satisfying. 99 is going to be a different kind of big, and then 100 is going to be the big farewell. And I'm working towards it as best I can. I'm really pushing to see what I can do to finish 99. Hopefully this month. I don't know. I'm trying. It's not there yet, but I'm gonna keep working. And if I can do that, then I can feel confident that I can do the same for 100. So that's what I'm going for. So I guess this is my way of wrapping up my discussion of the finale of Cosmic Fury is this promise to try and do right by all of you Ranger fans with my own finale. So with that, it's been almost 2 hours. It's been a long stream, and I think this is a good place to wrap things up. So thank you again, all of you, for your support throughout these many years, and throughout the course of this little live stream series. And as always, let us not forget our remaining 3 equally non-controversial phrases. So, number 1, say it with me, chat. Love is love. Number 2, say it with me, chat. Trans rights are human rights. And number 3, say it with me, chat. Robots are cool. Thank you. Yes, next week we will be returning to the Database Rangers Power Reviews commentary live streams with episode 93. Picking up where we left off. And until next time, farewell, Ranger fans, and may the power protect you.